You're watching Experience Comic Culture and Sales, streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
All right, guys. What's up, the internet? How's it going? I just yelled into my microphone, RIP headphone users. I just want to remind you guys that What's Up, the internet merch is available in the EXP merch store. Head over to the EXP Live, THEEXPLive.com to buy merch. Launching tomorrow, we have a spam shirt. We have a Rex Cap shirt, and we'll have a Save Fat Jack shirt up there tomorrow, hopefully, if I can get all that worked out. But I wanted to ask you guys a question before we start the show. Which of these Christmas memes should I send to my friends who are super religious? This one. Santa Claus is coming to punish the dishonorable, where Santa Claus, or St. Nicholas, is equated to Worf. Or this one, A Christmas Carol Abridged. Which one should I send to my friends? Especially the ones who are religious. Tell me in the comments, and then we're going to come back and talk about some books that I wish were only in the comments. We'll be right back. What's up, Preston, John, Kenneth, everybody? It's me, it's Sean, it's Dan, because Jay is doing his best Typhoid Mary impression and not the one from Daredevil. The other one that actually killed the bunch of people. So, send Worf, Star Trek is universal. I appreciate that, Preston. And I'm glad your commenting is working again, my friend. I worked hard on that yesterday.
By the way, Typhoid Mary was in the Iron Fist series. She was in the Daredevil comics, but she was in the Iron Fist series.
I don't care about the Iron Fist series. I care about the Daredevil comics.
I know, but there.
I think that is universally. Isn't that what the fans said?
I liked Iron Fist.
Season 2 was definitely better than Season 1, I think.
Agreed.
Yes, I will give you that.
So Kyle will appreciate this. I have decided that if I win the lottery and I do buy tickets, one of the things I'm going to do is buy a robo-dialer, and I'm going to send out spam calls. But all it's going to be is when it picks up, it's just going to be spam, 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 spam. I'm going to literally do spam calling.
At one point, I wrote a parody of that song to be an ad for the Comic Collectible show.
Mm-hmm.
And it was universally voted not to do that because A, it was too catchy, and B, it was very copyright infringy. Spam, 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 spam. Comics and spam, but mostly spam. So, you know.
This is why me winning the lottery would be a bad idea. Because I have a house that's just filled with Hot Toys and Warhammer figures, and I would be doing stupid things with my money.
Yeah, I would definitely be that guy who, they have the Call-in Oates, where it's a phone number you dial and you can hear Hall & Oates songs.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah.
I would have that, but it would just be Call-in Baton Rouge, and it would just be different versions of that country song. Just because someone would get so angry they would break their phone because of it.
They Might Be Giants has a similar thing, an answering machine you can call and hear them.
Uh-huh. I call it when I'm sad. I love the Johns. I met them one year at Gen Con, which was super fun. I got to see them play, and they ended with their cover of Bills, Bills, Bills.
Mm.
And they dedicated to all the people who were at Gen Con and therefore needed someone else to pay their bills for the next month because they spent all their money at Gen Con. My goal, Dan, is that to get you so into 40K that you have to come to Gen Con and play.
It's possible. I've already dropped a couple $100 on Warhammer, and this is just in like a week or so.
We can make it worth your time and let you run D&D campaigns. All right, this is In Stores This Week, where we talk about comics that are in stores this week, and not just about the other crap that's in our heads, although there's a fair amount of that.
New show.
Everybody say hi to Sean's new webcam.
Where's Sean's new webcam?
So it's why he's clear and Jay is not. Have we ruled out that the webcam's not what's making Jay sick?
Are you saying he has a computer virus?
All right, we read 11 books. Let's get started with Oz, Return of the Wicked Witch, #2.
I like this book well enough because of the art, but it just had all those nasty words in there. If they could have just done it without words, I would have enjoyed it greatly. I'm kidding. It's actually not a bad story. But I do really like the art in this book.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the better Zenescope book interior arts I've seen in a while. But I am fascinated by the whole idea that there is a witch before Glinda. And I'm kind of digging the story idea, the concept. It's a little slow. It could use a little better pacing. But overall, I'm actually kind of digging the story.
Yeah. Same here. This book reminds me of why I like Zenescope personally. Just compared to a lot of the one-shots that they've been doing. I'm like, Zenescope, what are you doing? And then they come out with this, and you're like, oh, yeah, Zenescope can write and do good art. I think the one thing that's fascinating me, though, is the one main henchman for the Bad Witch, and that they're showing the exposition with him and his thoughts. So I'm wondering what role he's going to play in the next issue or two. Is he going to turn on her, or is they just decide to do that for one issue? So I'm wondering if he's going to play a bigger part than what we're seeing so far in this one. But overall, 100% love this story.
Well, since he's a jack-o'-lantern head, it pretty much means he's going to be spoiled by the second or the third episode, and you're going to have to toss him out.
I'm not going back to the rim shot button.
I'm going to make you.
Nope, I refuse. I'm going to stand on my principles.
There are flying monkey-ish type things in it.
Yeah.
Ish.
Sort of. Yeah.
Look, Grimm, the thing Zenescope has always done well is their Wicked Witch stuff. Their Grimm fairy tales, their Wizard of Oz stuff. Right? It's always the thing that they've done best. And so this really is kind of hitting one in the pocket for them. It feels good. It reads well. The art flows really nicely. They have this beautiful...
Ooh.
This is the C cover by Igor Lomov. They have this beautiful cover. They're doing everything they do well, and they're doing it well. They need to do more of this and less of the other garbage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Next up is Gun Honey #4, which, Dan, did we read 1 through 3?
We've read a few of them on and off.
Okay.
And Titan sent it, and I threw it in there. Because sometimes you just want James Bond with boobs.
Well, and that was the takeaway from this book, is there are more breasts in this book than in that movie Showgirls.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is if Showgirls and James Bond merged together.
This is it.
And no one wore a shirt.
No.
Right. So
go ahead, Dan.
It's not, I mean, it's a fun read, but yeah, there are boobs everywhere in this. And I was okay with that. I mean, it's Thanksgiving. We're all going to have turkey breasts this weekend anyway. So it kind of fits in with the holiday.
Except that this is Christmas.
You don't have turkey on Christmas?
Yeah, but you said Thanksgiving.
I'm just thankful for this book.
There you go.
I think I'm done. Go ahead, John.
I'll go next, Sean. I have one major question for this book. There are women in very scantily clad clothes with guns. Where did they hide the guns? I don't want to know, but I need to know. Like, this is my problem with this kind of book, is that they ask you to forget basic things like, how did they sneak a gun into this showgirl line? And why are the showgirls like doing a thing underwater? Does no one know how refraction works? Like, stuff like this that, like, again, that movie, if you watch the movie Showgirls, you learn that this doesn't work. So these are my problems with this book. Other than that, this was freaking awesome. Great spy story, great revenge story, great action, good explosions, like everything about this book. But like, science is still science.
You obviously don't know what the G in G string stands for.
I do, Dan, but I'm not going to say that live on the air.
Yes, so it either stands for gun because that's where you holster it, or it's when you flick it, it's you get that note like you're playing a guitar. One of the two.
It's gonna be.
You're gonna press that button. Sean, what did you think of Gun Honey?
So I did actually enjoy it, and I was like, within the first couple of pages, I'm like, oh, we have boobs. Okay, it's gonna be that kind of book. I will say, I'm curious what the first few issues of this were like, just to know maybe what I was missing up to this point. That said, though, just this issue by itself, jumping in, actually was really, really enjoyable. So I loved it. I think that it's, like Kyle said, if you're into kind of pulp noir, James Bond with major boobs, give it a shot. I think it's definitely worth the read.
The artwork, John, is
when they had shirts on.
Right. That's what I'm saying. The artwork is breast heavy, John. It's kind of painted. It's a watercolory style, I guess. It's not super realistic or super not realistic. It just kind of is.
Would you consider the art breathtaking?
So what I would say is, what you should do is give it a look. It's more about the writing than the art in these pulp books.
Oh my god!
Speaking of breastises,
Lord. Hey Joe.
Deja Thoris makes an appearance.
Yes. This is kind of an odd mix of. I mean, you've got Scott Bryan Wilson, and David Avalon kind of switching off on here. You got 4 stories. You've got Draculina, whose the artwork on it was better than I thought. I mean, I didn't like it, and then I found myself really liking the art on it, which was kind of weird. But it's kind of a wrestling fantasy. Then you have a Draculina story that had good art. Iman Casellos. And then the next 2 stories were like, okay, there was a Vampirella story, and then a continuation of a character I'm not familiar with, but I know it's another character from Robert E. Howard. Captain Gulliver, I think it is.
Yeah.
So it is a continuation of the previous Savage Tales. At least the Captain Gulliver story is. But it's just a pretty good little anthology book if you're looking for short stories. It's fun.
Yeah. See, I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. This book was just kind of boring. The only story I actually really, really enjoyed was the one actually about Gulliver. And I was like, I saw the to be continued. Now that you said that it's a continuation from a previous book, now I get it. So now I kind of want to see more of that particular story, but the other ones for me were kind of a take it or leave it type deal. Personally, I wasn't a huge fan of it.
I have a question for the editorial team at Dynamite. If it's a one shot, how can it be to be continued? Not a one shot. If we could spread that message over to the gang at Valiant, that would be, or not Valiant, at Zenescope, that would be helpful. But no, this is a continuation of stuff we've read before, and some of it was great. I really did like the wrestling story with Draculina. I enjoyed the John Carter Deja Thoris story. But what I found is that when Dynamite puts Dynamite Entertainment Unleashes or whatever, when they don't put the Dynamite trade dress on there, I tend to like the story less. I don't know if that's an intentional thing. I don't know if that's a branding thing. I don't know what that thinking is. But if it's got the Dynamite logo with the block font, that we see everywhere, I tend to like those books more than when they have this weird, I don't know, Comic Sans style font saying it's Dynamite. The two middle books, the Gulliver book and the other Draculina story, so we were just kind of, or the Vampirella story, we're just kind of.
Yeah, see, for me, it was the Draculina and the Gulliver story, but the John Carter and Vampirella were just a no-go for me.
I like John Carter. It doesn't take a lot to get me behind a John Carter story. So that's what that is. Like
that was actually my first John Carter experience as far as reading a comic.
I tend to read all John Carter stories and look at them thinking, wow, this could be a really good Adam Strange story. But then I read Adam Strange story thinking this could be a really good John Carter story.
Need a crossover.
And I read Martian Manhunter thinking, why hasn't he killed them both already? All right. So I'm going to, while you guys talk about this book, step away because I didn't read this one. It didn't appear in the server when I looked at it. And then when I went back and looked again, I'm clearly just blind and missed it because it was there the whole time.
Okay.
So I'm going to cop out on this one and be like, I'm going to read it tonight.
When I hold my hands up like this, it's safe to come back.
Well, I'm going to go use the little producer's room. So keep talking until I get back.
Okay. Are you a fan of Shakespeare? And Mafia? Then this book is for you. This is Fred Van Lente taking The Tempest and turning it into a hitman story. And it's not even subtle. This is over the top. This is him naming Caliban and all Prospero. And for those who don't know, Prospero is the only magician to ever appear in actual Shakespeare. I love the name Prospero. But this is a continuation of the Jennifer Blood character, Julieta Romero, or Romeo, who was created in the last Jennifer Blood series. She's being transferred, and you have a mafia war set up that knocks them out of the sky into an island where they're trying to kill. It's a mob story, but it's done to the classic Shakespeare play, The Tempest. I thought the art was pretty good. I thought the story was entertaining, but it could have used a little more. There was some conveniences that don't get explained, because I think Fred was kind of leaning into the following the Shakespeare outline and kind of let a few things go. But overall, it's a fun little story. It's a one-shot. If you like the character from Jennifer Blood, you can continue it here.
Well, at least you gave it a good review, because this was another kind of not good one for me. And not really, and it's not because I'm not a fan of Shakespeare. I definitely am, but for me, the characters didn't really seem to make a whole lot of sense. The little odd German kid and whatnot, a lot of it was throwing me off. And to me, this it was hard to get into the story because just I don't know. It's one of those where I agree with you that the art was pretty good, but I don't know. It's hard to put my finger on what it was, but I just couldn't get drawn in. None of the characters for me were interesting enough that I actually cared. Other than like the really campy way they did the dialogue for the Italian boss at the beginning, which was that was kind of funny because I was reading it kind of half out loud while I was doing this. So, but other than that, it was just hard for anything to really draw me into the book itself.
Yeah. Yeah. See, I think that's where Fred made the mistake, is that he relied on people knowing the Tempest. So he kind of assumed everybody knows those characters, and he didn't develop them as well as he should have, because they're parodies on those characters from the Tempest. So I think that's where the flaw in the story is. But like I said, it's just a fun little addition. So
I really do want to read some Jennifer Blood, though.
If I have any, laying around, I'll put them back up on the server. Yeah. Okay, we're going to keep talking. Yes. Kyle has moved us into this mode.
Yeah, there we go.
Yes. So you ready for Christmas?
Yeah, I just got done doing 12 days at about 156 hours straight at work. So I am ready to relax for a little bit.
As a comic reader, if you could pick one graphic novel to give as a Christmas gift to somebody that hasn't read it, what's the one graphic novel that you think is a great representation?
I'd probably lean from something from a horror genre, because I feel like a lot of people that come into comics are horror fans to begin with in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to do a couple of dark horse picks, something like Hellraiser is really good. Surprisingly, I've looked at that book and I'm like, that's brutal. If I were to suggest something fun, hold on. Let me look back here because I got my stuff here. Actually, you know what? This would be fun. You've probably heard of it, Hack Slash?
Yeah. Tim Seeley.
Yeah, I definitely suggest that. Yeah. Because it's got the horror vibe. It's interesting where you have a universe where all the slashers and everything that you know from movies are real. And she's going after in these various storylines and actually hunting them. So I think a lot of people might find that fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Matthew in chat says Nailbiter.
Yes, we have I think all the volumes somewhere behind me.
All right, so we ready to pick back up?
Sorry, I was unavoidably detained.
That's fine.
All right. Let's pick back up with The Witcher, Ballad of Two Wolves, #1.
I was so happy to see this one in the list today. This is where I started. I love The Witcher. I love the TV series. I love the books. I like the video game. So I am fully on board The Witcher, and this one was a lot of fun for me. And again, I may be in the role of Jay this week, liking a lot of these books, since Jay is out sick. But this one I really did enjoy. I thought the artwork was better than I've seen in a lot of the Witcher comics so far. I really like this art. And it's not like so focused on the version from the games or trying to do a Henry Cavill look. They just kind of made him look like a good character. And Jaxer as well, or in here they call him Dandelion. For anybody who hasn't read the novels, the character's name is Dandelion in the books, but Dandelion is a yellow flower. And the French version of it is closer to Jaxer, so that's how it got. So where they translate it to Dandelion, they don't translate it in the TV show.
Yeah.
So, but it's a nice play. It's kind of like it's a cross between Red Riding Hood and the Three Little Pigs. So they're picking up on these like grim fairy tale stories, which I thought was really fun. So,
yeah.
Go ahead, John.
Same. 100%. I enjoyed this. Now, granted, I don't have experience with the novels and the games just yet, but being a fan of the show definitely made it easier to get into this book. But I think even if you haven't experienced any of that stuff, you can come into this book and actually really enjoy it for some of the reasons you mentioned, like they're pulling some of the classic fairy tales and doing this kind of dark take on it. I 100% think it was well worth the read. This might, if not for one other book, this might have been my pick this week of the one that I enjoyed the most.
I have never seen an episode of the show. I've never read the novels. I've never played the games. If this was this being my first real introduction to this character, I thought this was a super solid introduction. It makes me want to have read the books or played the games or have done anything else with this character. That doesn't mean I'm gonna, but it makes me wish I had. Especially if it's all like this. Right now, I think we've read some other Witcher books in the past where I've been like, I don't really get it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this is the first one where we're coming in kind of at number one into a Witcher series. So maybe that's what I needed to kind of get me into this character. I thought this was super fun. I thought it was a really, really good tale of these fairy tales that we're kind of jumping into with Red Riding Hood and that kind of stuff. So to me, it just seemed like a great way to, hey guys, I know there's been a lot of like heat around this series because we're bringing in the least popular Hemsworth and changing some things around. Here we're going to throw this story that you're all comfortable with at you. Good work.
Real quick, actually, Matthew in the comments is actually one of my coworkers. What's up, Matt?
That's why he was telling you to quit complaining about working all that overtime.
Yeah. For anybody who hasn't read the novels that all of this is based on, they're translated from Polish, but the translations are really good. And the books have a really strong sense of humor. So you get all the fantasy and the fairy tale and all the stuff you love from the series, but it has a surprisingly good sense of humor in the book. So you will find yourself laughing probably more in these things than you expect, but it's not taking you out of the moment laughing. So I do recommend these novels as well. And a lot of the novels are like short story collections. So they're easy to jump into.
All right. Next up, I have been reading Sergio Aragon's Gru for literally as long as I can remember.
Last week.
Well, no. I mean, I can remember as a kid getting Gru books at the comic book store, like as a very young kid, because it was they were totally kids could read them, but adults everybody could read Gru and find something for them. When my parents made the mistake of letting me buy Zap, that's when we got into some trouble. But I love Sergio Aragon. I love Gru. I love this story, Gods Against Gru, because it's the natural progression of Gru, right? Like there's only so many places Gru can go on an adventure before you have to make him a demigod. And so to have done that now, it really does feel like a fitting continuation.
Sergio Aragonés is the only artist my ex-wife knew. I would go to comic conventions and she would care less about anything. And then Sergio walked up to our table and I introduced her. I said, Deb, this is Sergio Aragonés. And she's like, Mad in the Margins. And her eyes got all wide. And You know, that's what she grew up with, was his artwork. This is just a fun series. This is Gru becoming a god, and it's just I had to skim a bit of it because I was running out of time, but I'm going to go back and read it closer. But this was so much fun, and it's just classic Gru. You know, if you're a fan of Gru, this is just great.
Boy, don't I feel bad now because I might need to go back and maybe reread it again because for me it was a little too much on the campy side of things. The art definitely fits what the story is, and this is probably I think this is my first experience with Sergio, and actually this series in general. I'd never heard of it until you put this on the server today.
You've never heard of Gru the Wanderer?
Nope, I'm not.
I need a minute.
Do we have a hiring process for this job?
I'm gonna walk across the hall and see if the therapist has a slot for me.
Okay.
Yeah. You got to remember though, I've literally only been reading since like 2015, so there's a lot that I don't know about yet. But I'll probably go back and reread this. I'm going to try and take a different approach mentally. I think I'd come off like reading Witcher and something else, so my mind was probably not in the right space to enjoy this book because it is a major shift from everything else on this list this week.
It's a major, just so you know, it's a major shift from everything else, and then you can stop that sentence.
Pretty much. I will say this though, I feel like if you are a Monty Python fan, that you could probably enjoy this book. So if that is your jam, which I do like it, this 100% will be great. Although I will say the cheese dip obsession, I do find that hilarious. I thought that was great. That little scene where he's up with the gods and whatnot eating it, I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah.
I will say this is when they show the dog, is he just thinking what he's saying or is he actually talking out loud? Okay.
He's thinking.
Okay.
There's a lot, he even says, there are times I think he can hear me.
Yeah. I thought the dog's thoughts were almost the funniest thing in the entire book for me.
And the dog is more intelligent than Gru.
Okay. Yeah. So now I've really got to go back and kind of read things and see a little more what this is about, like what you guys are talking about.
Yeah. We will convert you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you got to remember that Sergio and Gru came out of that underground comics movement that was Art Crumb. And I'm going to blank on his name now, who did Mouse and some of those guys who were publishing stuff that no one thought would go anywhere or could do anything.
Yeah.
And Sergio got in with the Mad Magazine guys and Cracked and all of this kind of stuff to really present this
40 years? Jesus.
Unlike any, like, I think the closest thing to Gru in terms of tone may be Bone.
Oh, and even Bone's a little more serious than this.
Right. Like it is the, and now for something completely different of comics.
Yeah, you cannot come into this expecting anything serious. It's like turn your mind off and just try to have a good time. And I feel like I probably didn't do that, and that is why the book missed the mark for me. And I probably need to go back to this, maybe with a different mindset or another book to kind of get where this one's coming from.
In fact, the more hallucinogens you take before you read this book, the better this book will be.
Yeah. Did you ever watch? Was it America's Funniest Home Videos?
I did watch that show. Yeah,
they have every once in a while little characters come up on the screen and like sweep across the show episode.
Oh yeah,
yeah. That was Sergio Agronis as well.
Oh okay.
So
the character reminds me of the Little Caesars guy that they used to have as their man. That's literally what
it wouldn't shock me if Sergio Aragon drew that too.
Yeah.
So no, it's there's a reason I put this in the middle. It's because the second half of this series gets a little heavy.
Yeah. So
second half of our list gets a little heavy.
Yeah.
This is not that.
There's even one that made me cry a little.
Well, at least y'all got me to kind of reconsider my stance on this series as a whole, so I can at least go try to get it and enjoy it and have a laugh.
Absolutely. All right. Up next, I am a big Kevin Scott fan, so I was excited to see Dead Seas on the list.
Did your excitement remain when you finished reading it?
Well, I was going to let someone else go first, but yes, it did.
Oh, okay.
I like the premise of this book, right? Like, your main character is a con artist who winds up getting conned himself by super secret government organization or big business, or we're not sure exactly what it is yet. Right, but he winds up in a situation that is unlike any that I think I've ever read in a comic. And the book is dark and kind of I don't even know what the word is to describe it.
Disturbing.
Yeah, definitely.
I was going to go with effed up.
Yeah, even that.
But it was an interesting story, and I'm interested to see where it goes. I have two songs that keep playing in my head: "Dead Sea" by the Lumineers and "Ghosts" by the Strumbellas. So I've got this weird kind of folk Americana playlist just bumping around in my head, only because of this book.
Yeah, I don't know. It was one of those where there were some pages that it could really draw me into the story, and then there were other pages where I'm just like, what is going on? Especially like when they were doing the meeting, when they first got on the boat and they were doing the orientation with the prisoners, there were some things that writing wise didn't seem to flow. Like somebody would ask a question and then maybe a couple pages later, all of a sudden it gets answered. And in that way, it didn't really flow. But as soon as they got to the part where they're doing the quote unquote training, then the book got infinitely more interesting.
Have you never been in a meeting where you ask a question and your boss just no sells it until later when it gets answered, but not in the meeting just because it's unavoidable?
No.
Maybe you work at a better company than I do. Keeping in mind that I'm self-employed.
Yeah, no, my bosses are about as straightforward as you can get when you ask a question. But like I said, I'm kind of in between on this book. It wasn't loved. I didn't hate it. I'm just kind of like, I do want to see where issue 2 goes. Maybe they will push the story much more forward in a more organized way. I think that's really what it was. This book felt a little disorganized.
I have an odd reaction to this book. I respect the creative team. I thought it's a well-made book, and I wouldn't mind never reading another issue because I can see where it's good, but it's not for me. It's, I can totally see people reading this and loving it, but it didn't click for me. So I don't want to shy anybody away from this book because this may be your cup of tea, just not mine. So, yeah, if we don't get another issue of this one, I'm not going to be sad, but I'll read them if we get them because there is definitely something going on here. There's a story. I just don't know if it's a story I want to hear. If that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Is this the one that made you cry, Dan?
No, but
Sonic the Hedgehog Scrapnik Island number 3.
Yeah.
Still in love with this series. This is the book I can come to, turn my brain off, have a good time reading it, despite the fact that the last issue and a half have been a little darker. But at least now, finally, Mecha Sonic talks in this issue. We finally get that. He's not just a robot staring at you the whole time. And now I'm curious where they're going to take the story because it seems less about Sonic at this point and more about where Mecha Sonic wants to go with what his plan is. And I feel like the next issue is probably going to go more into that and maybe a little less away from Sonic and Tails. And I kind of like that. It's just a fun series, great art. Just have a good time reading it, turn your brain off for a little while, and then come back to the world. So
I don't come to Sonic and or Hedgehogs to be emotionally destroyed. I don't come to Sonic and or Hedgehogs to read dark comics. But sure enough, here's where we are. This book had me feeling my feelings in a way that I was not prepared for a Sonic book to make me feel my feelings. That being said, I have been into this book since the beginning. It's still great, still a lot of fun. I don't know how I feel about a book relying on Mecha Sonic to drive its plot forward and not regular Sonic, but I'm interested to see how they do it.
I'm not a big fan of Sonic. I've said that each time, but I am enjoying this series. There is something going on here. There's a cool story. You kind of see the certain betrayals happening, but I have a feeling there's going to be a few more twists and turns as we go. Yeah, I'm not convinced the betrayal is a full betrayal yet.
yeah, I'm with you there.
But I'm interested to see where this is going, which is weird for me to say about a Sonic the Hedgehog comic.
It's because it's good.
I found this cartridge under your sink that says Sonic and Hedgehog, a flashlight filled with jelly beans, and a hammer. Is that a reference that anyone else gets?
No.
All right, I'll just be over here.
All right.
I wish something would kill this series.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's Books of Slaughter, which is coming soon from still more of this series.
Okay, I'm going to start here because I seem to be the only one that still enjoy this series, which is weird because I only got into it recently.
Well, maybe that's why, Dan. You haven't lived long enough to be disappointed.
Not in this series.
That's fair.
Plenty of other things. I mean, I did see Halle Berry's Catwoman. This is...
You finally got him to do it, Dan. You got him to do it.
No, I'm not clicking the button. Not clicking the button.
I still am curious where this is going with the woman coming to kill her and the creature shape-shifting. It's still got my attention. I'm curious where this is going. But again, I don't have the previous 20 some odd issues to go from. I came in late to this and I'm still enjoying it. So, because it is kind of a new concept to me.
Yeah. So where we're at now, I think basically since it feels like issue 21 forward is during the first main story arc, which is still one of the best arcs I've ever read in all of comics. Erica basically started kind of straying away from what House of Slaughter was actually about, or their order, whatever they're in. So this, I can see where the story's going, but I will say, I think where the series was beforehand now is there were very few issues where it was a lull. You might have one, it was almost never two, and that's where these last two issues for me have kind of been. At this point, I'm like, all right, let's give us the cutter. Go ahead and give us this, more of this monster, especially now at the end of the book with what they had it do. So I have a feeling that 28 is going to be a decent payoff issue. So I'm kind of back on I want to see what's happening and less about all right, it needs to end. But if 28 doesn't give a payoff based on what they've shown, then I might kind of check myself out on the series as a whole.
Something is Killing the Children is to comic books what teams led by Matt Ryan are to football. Really good in the first half and then non-existent in the second half. The first 15 books of this were some of the best writing I've ever read in comics. And I've been reading comics nonstop for 28 years. Some of the best writing I've ever read, hands down, no argument about it. The second 15 or the second 17 thus far have been just about as boring as watching the Colts in the second half of Saturday's game. I've slept better and seen better and read better comics. That said, because of the groundwork laid in the first 15, I'm not going to stop reading. You've done the work. I'm here till the end now.
Yeah.
But give me a reason to not be that guy. So issue 28, like Sean predicted, should be a good payoff issue. Issue 30 is coming. We know issue 30 is coming, and it's going to be insane. We're built. I get it, but it's a slog right now, and it's a slog I never thought I'd have to read. And Something Is Killing the Children.
You know, in your reference, there are people who loved watching the Colts in the second half. They're called Viking fans.
Sure. I recognize that as a thing. I mean, especially because they made the playoffs. But what I'm talking about is if you watch the Colts offense, you might as well have made a sandwich.
That's how I feel about the Texans every season.
Well, that's how the Texans play football.
Yeah.
All right, up next, a book that I'm certain is the book that made us all cry. All New Firefly, Big Damn Finale #1. And my review for this book is, damn it, David Boer.
Yeah.
Don't do this to me.
Didn't see that coming.
And we're not going to spoil it.
No.
There is a huge spoiler that could be told. The end of the book is a huge turning point for this series. Now, we stopped reading All New Firefly at some point. Because there's a couple of issues there that I don't have digital copies of that I had to get physical copies of.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a gap in our collective, as this group at least. So if you're only watching this show, there's a gap where we haven't talked about where some big stuff happened. And then you get to this book, and it's the biggest of big stuff. So, John Spilios, the answer to that question is, or Tom Brady after Giselle left him. So this book is one of those that, whoo,
yeah,
maybe save for last.
And unfortunately for me, not having that, I think the Firefly comic I read a couple weeks ago was my first time ever with this. So there's obviously a lot before this that I missed to understand where we got to this point. But that said, I agree. What happens at the end of the book, if that doesn't make you feel something, then you're not a human. You don't like comics. We can't be friends.
Yeah.
But, you know, in a weird way, and of course, when it got to that point, I thought something different was going to happen after it.
Right.
But I'm guessing that this is not a one shot. I'm assuming, correct?
This is a one shot that is actually the finale of an ongoing or of a miniseries. So they finished the miniseries and then they added this.
Gotcha. So hopefully where they left this, I want to see what happens, because it got me curious enough that if they leave it like this, then I feel like I'm going to be a little disappointed, you know, several months, a couple years down the road, if they don't follow up with this story, because you can't do what I'm assuming is a pretty big change in the universe here and not continue with it. So if that doesn't get anybody in the comments interested, then I don't know what to tell you, but it's definitely one of those where they do a change in this series and you're going to want to know what happens next, and you're going to be mad if they don't. Basically, is all I can tell you about this book.
And the cover doesn't help.
No, that really doesn't.
The first A through C all come polybagged in stores, ironically.
Yeah, I got to the end of this and was just blown away. I forget, I guess, that Firefly isn't an active series, and I'm so used to these shows, or when you take a show and you put it into the comics, that you always put the toys back how you got them. You don't expect major changes. And this one's had multiple, because stuff like Ron Glass passing away, they went ahead and wrote Book's character out because it made sense. This stunned me. Didn't see it coming. Really just, yeah.
All the feels.
Yep, all the feels. Yeah.
That would have been last, but I just copied these in the order that Dan had them on the server. So, A Legacy of Violence, number 3 from Cullen Bunn and Mad Cave.
Did we miss number 2?
No, we had 1 and 2 in the same week. We started with number 2, but because of the way Mad Cave sends their books, I was able to get them both, and we read them both in 1 week.
Okay. Yeah, I still don't like it. I didn't like the first 2, and I don't like this one. I don't care about the characters. I don't like the art, and just I don't like the coloring, I think is what it is. And just, yeah, I got nothing. So I'm going to tap out at this point. Let you guys talk it up.
All right. I'm personally, I think when we did it initially, I had said that the first issue I didn't like so much. And then when we got halfway into the second issue with that big scene out in front of the bar, the whole series took a turning point for me, and I was invested. So coming into this book, I'm still there. I'm still actually wanting to see what's going on. The mind games are really ramping up between the killer and our main character. So I'm actually invested on it. I do agree the color is a little wonky on the art, but it fits the tone of the book, in my opinion, perfectly. So it's kind of hard to argue that, even if I don't enjoy it. But I hope that next issue they continue at least in the direction that they're going with this, so that I don't lose interest, because I feel like you could lose interest in this series pretty quickly if they don't keep pushing it forward. If you get any kind of lull for an issue like you do in issue 1, you might be in trouble, I think, from this point on, given what you've done with the latter half of 2 in this issue.
Right. This is the artwork on this, because both guys have mentioned it, is that Andrea Moody style that you saw in Maniac of New York and some of these other titles that he's done, where it's a lot of line work and then sort of watercolory, sort of dirty brushwork, I guess, is kind of how I would describe it.
Yeah.
With line work to kind of give everything shape. It's a unique style that lends itself to this, like it lends itself to Maniac of New York. But with this story, the kind of, you see it on the cover there, the sort of washed out color style, the washed out art style is accentuated by the appearance of blood. When you see red, it really pops off the page, so you know that it's there.
Yeah.
Whereas other series, it doesn't as much. I think the writing has been very good. I wish they would get to the point. Like, they've been dancing around this 731 or whatever it is, this thing that he's searching for or that he's involved in or whatever it's going to, but we don't know when we're 3 issues in. We need to get to the point and start moving forward rather than continuing to dig a hole, which is what it feels like that this book does, is it digs a hole and then it starts moving there and then the book ends. It's a really fast read. I read it, this book, faster than any other book we had this week, just because it does really flow really well. So I really am enjoying this series. I get why Dan is not into it. And I agree with Sean in that if this book missteps, I think it's over. They've got Cullen Bunn and Andre Moody have to hit every mark going forward perfectly. Otherwise, I think you run the risk of alienating your readers and having people walk away from it. So, still interested to see where it's going. It'll be interesting to see.
Yep.
All right, Art Spiegelman. Yes, that was from a while ago. There, Rippenstein. Okay, so Dan, you're back tomorrow with Warhammer 40K.
Yes.
I'm filling in for Dan doing hot takes on Thursday.
Nice.
Sean is sleeping and trying to avoid Typhoid Mary. Is there anything coming out from Triangle of Truth, Sean, that you want to tell people about?
So yesterday I did a video that just came out for like some of my favorite comic book movies of all time. So that one's up. Either tomorrow or Friday will be, I decided to go another direction with the list and do video game movies, based movies, to talk about that. And then next week, for sure, I'm doing my best of this year for comics, just my opinions. And I think I've got a decent mix. There are some Kickstarter comics on there, but then DC, Marvel, and a few others. So there's some stuff on there for sure.
All right. So, as always, this show is brought to you by Comic Shop Locator. Head over to comicshoplocator.com and type in the area code where you're going. Are you traveling for Christmas? Do you want to visit a comic book shop near where you're traveling for Christmas? Type in a zip code, the area code, whatever the number is, the longer one, by where you are, and it will tell you where the comic shops are near you. Call them and see what their hours are because it's Christmas. Let comic shop owners visit their families and junk. So check all that out, and we will see you guys next week as we run over time because I got long-winded. Join the party. Head over to our link tree to find all